Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Charges laid in a machete attack on the Granville Strip. More about the suspect and the condition of the victims. Plus,
it just seems like a ripoff.
How some airlines are getting around new rules to compensate passengers.
I think we have had a regression.
And another Indigenous woman found dead. With that, more criticism toward the VPD and its handling of such cases.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Advocates are calling it unfair and unethical. With so many flight cancellations right now, there's concern over Air Canada classifying staffing shortages as safety issues. As Joel Ballard reports, this means they wouldn't have to provide compensation to stuck passengers.
Ainsley Beer was all set to visit her family in BC.
I had a 6 a.m. flight scheduled from Regina to Vancouver direct.
But it was cancelled. Beer was shifted to a later flight, so she filed a claim with Air Canada for compensation.
And it was denied because they said the flight was cancelled due to safety concerns.
Specifically crew constraints, which appears to be a common practice. According to an Air Canada memo, flight cancellations caused by staff shortages are now classified as a safety issue, which frees the airline from paying compensation.
It just seems like a ripoff. It seems like they're finding a kind of a sneaky reason to get around having to pay. It just seems unfair.
In Canada, passengers are entitled to compensation if a flight is cancelled within 14 days and is within the airline's control. It all depends on how late you arrive at your destination. If it's 6 hours or less, a large airline is required to pay $400. Between 6 and 9 hours, that rate goes up to $700, and if it's more than 9 hours late, the total compensation is $1,000.
The airline controls how many staff it hires. With that in mind, staffing shortage cannot possibly be anything but within the carrier's control. If they don't have enough crew members, they shouldn't sell that many tickets.
And the Canadian Transportation Agency agrees, saying the airline must provide evidence showing that the crew shortage was not the result of its own actions or inactions. Failing this, such flight disruptions are considered within the airline's control. For its part, Air Canada denies the allegations, saying the memo is not a policy, and Air Canada rejects the suggestion it is applying a blanket approach to reasons for cancellations. Each flight cancellation is assessed on its own merit. If a claim is denied, passengers can either file a complaint with the Canadian Transportation Agency or take the matter to small claims court. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Charges have now been laid in connection with a machete attack on the Granville Strip Saturday night. As Josh Grant tells us, 4 people were seriously hurt in the assault that happened inside an SRO.
The gruesome attack happened here on Saturday night. Police say a man in a rooming house allegedly set fire to his suite before attacking 4 people with a machete. 48-year-old Ibrahim Abdellah Bakit has been charged with aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, and possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. The man who runs the rooming house where the attack happened says the victims are a security guard and 3 residents, all sent to hospital with life-altering injuries.
One person lost some fingers, so I guess they're getting those sewn back on. One guy took it in the neck and twice in the head with the blunt side of the, it wasn't the sharp side of the machete. And one guy took it in the side of the head.
It's not clear whether mental health is a factor in this case.
Vancouver's mayor is now calling on the province to boost mental health resources and keep violent offenders off the streets. He says too often people who pose a threat to themselves or to others are being released back into SROs or encampments.
That's why we need a systems reform here, both with facilities that are appropriate for either people with severe mental health challenges that need to be held involuntarily, or more facilities for violent offenders.
BC Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth declined an interview, but in a statement he said the government is making investments in mental health and addictions care and working hard to build a comprehensive system for all British Columbians. In a written statement to CBC, the VPD says it echoes Mayor Stewart's concerns and that officers have training in de-escalation and experience dealing with people who have mental health needs, but arresting them and keeping them in jail isn't a long-term solution. For now, Bathe will remain in custody until his next court appearance. Josh Grant, CBC News, Vancouver.
2 people are dead, and BC's oversight agency is investigating a second incident this weekend after a police chase in Abbotsford ended in a deadly crash. Officers say the driver of the stolen vehicle hit a tree, killing the male driver and female passenger after yesterday's pursuit. The victims were allegedly driving a stolen vehicle. That crash marks the 15th officer-involved incident in just over 4 months. That's double the number of IIO incidents they usually deal with in an entire year.
We're doing the best we can. Our follow-up work, however, is taking longer than we would like, but it's unfortunately it is what's going to happen. We, like many industries, have some staffing shortages.
McDonald says one possible explanation for the current increase in officer-involved shootings is more suspects now carrying firearms than in the past. Well, there's more criticism tonight over how Vancouver police are handling investigations into the disappearances of young Indigenous women. Another death over the weekend is the latest in a series of disturbing cases. And as Michelle Gassoub reports, advocates are warning violence against Indigenous women and girls is accelerating at a terrifying rate.
Another young Indigenous woman found dead. 20-year-old Tatiana Harrison was found in Richmond on Saturday. Her death is drawing renewed scrutiny of Vancouver police investigations.
I've spoken to many family members over the years and more recently who have been very dissatisfied with the way in which the police have communicated with them, have shared information or not, have worked with them. And so when we see another disappearance, when we see another death, I have to look back at this history and ask, where are we?
Advocates say VPD has failed to learn from lessons of the past and that police response to investigations has gone downhill. In May, 24-year-old Chelsea Poorman was found near an empty mansion in Shaughnessy, the same month that 14-year-old Noelle Osoup was found in an apartment on East Hastings. And just last week, 24-year-old Quem Manuel Godfredson's body found just a block from there. These cases have sparked criticism of police. In Poorman's case, police deemed the death not suspicious very quickly. And a VPD officer is now under investigation for neglect of duty in Osoup's case.
We've had a regression to the extent to which we are seeing the combination of factors that has created the conditions where we could easily, I think, have a situation where we have a serial killer in the neighborhood.
It was 10 years ago now that the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry scrutinized the police response into the case of Robert Pickton. It found that police failed in their investigation, allowing Pickton to prey on women in Vancouver's downtown east side for years. 63 recommendations were made, but advocates say many of them haven't been implemented or aren't going far enough. We asked police for an interview today, and they said that no one was available. They said in a statement that the circumstances surrounding all of these cases were very different. They said they are committed to working with the families and answering the question of what happened to each of these young women. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
The growing number of tents propping up on Vancouver's downtown east side is having an effect on neighboring communities. Store owners in Chinatown say it's discouraging business. And as Leanne Young reports, they say governments aren't doing enough to help.
It's always buzzing at beloved Chinatown bakery, Newtown, but its owner says there's a group of regulars who are missing.
The senior come here for daily, I don't see them now.
She says they're scared of Chinatown, afraid of crime and the homelessness crisis that often leaves people panhandling on her doorsteps. She wants to see the tents on her neighboring streets removed, but is worried they'll pop up again elsewhere.
We're just disappointed. We're almost giving up, But, that's why, you can see it. The Chinese merchant, they move out of Chinatown. They don't have hope.
Just up the street at Forum Appliance, owner Tracy Cho is asking similar questions of all three levels of government.
We need someone to actually come and solve the problem. It's not for us merchants to figure it out. That's way beyond our scope. But for us, for our business to survive, something needs to be done.
She says she's also had customers steer away because of their location. The head of Chinatown's Business Improvement Association says repeated encampments in the area have led to growing tension. But this time, it's more challenging.
We're literally not blocks away, but we're a couple feet away from those encampments. And, we deserve, as any other resident of the city, to feel safe and within our own community.
He wants more solutions offered than just promises of housing. Other community advocates are hanging on to hope that the community, as always, will survive.
I think there's always a sense of resiliency in the neighborhood of Chinatown. That is the history of Chinatown, that we've had to fight and endure through so many different challenges.
As for where the tent residents will go, BC Housing says in an email it doesn't have access to large numbers of new spaces in Vancouver to accommodate the timing of the emergency order.
There's also no firm date for when the tents have to come down. The city says in an email it's looking at storage solutions for people's personal belongings, and they're going to solve that before the structures have to be removed. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
A man from BC has gone missing in Spain. While a missing person investigation is underway there, today Victoria police are making an appeal for information about him. 67-year-old Scott Graham was last seen on July 15th when he visited the Canadian Embassy in Madrid. Police say Graham suffers from a medical condition that could become life-threatening. Investigators believe Graham may have visited a hospital in Madrid, but the outcome of that visit is not known. Anyone with information about Graham is being asked to contact Victoria Police. The BC Wildfire Service says the situation is improving around the southern Okanagan community of Olalla, which was ordered evacuated last week as the Keremeos wildfire approached.
Aside from the heat and the dryness, it was a really good weekend for working, and we had a lot of people out there doing just that. Winds have been calm for a few days now, and that's helping us out a lot. We're making really good gains in terms of containment lines around this fire.
Zandberg says the southeastern flank of the nearly 60-kilometer wildfire, square kilometer wildfire rather, is not contained yet, but he says crews are getting there. More than 500 homes have been ordered evacuated since the wildfire was reported on July 29th. A Smoky Skies bulletin has been posted for the southern Okanagan Valley. Now, with the fire and flood risks increasing all around, the city of Surrey is looking for emergency volunteers.
More and more of these emergencies of different scales. I mean, we just went through COVID, and emergency can be any shape and form. And I don't believe that we're, as a society, overly prepared. And our best army of people that we can sort of motivate and get and help, however it's needed, are our volunteers.
Emergency Support Services volunteers provide lodging, groceries, and clothing to people displaced by emergencies. But volunteer numbers have gone down since the pandemic. The city of Surrey is in urgent need of both on-call emergency support and community engagement volunteers. And as extreme heat becomes more of a frequent occurrence, many are looking for ways to cool off. Stephen Shepard, the director of Collaborative for Advanced Landscape Planning at UBC, spoke to CBC's BC Today on how to make cities cooler by strategically planting more trees.
In Vancouver and across Metro Vancouver, there are many suburban areas that have really very low canopy cover, something like 6% or 10% or 12%, when you really should be aiming for 30 to preferably 40% canopy cover if you really want that to optimize the amount of cooling. The trees and the overall green infrastructure, the vegetation and any water features as well. Those are nature's air conditioners, and that's the coolest and easiest and probably cheapest way to reduce temperatures generally. So we do need to do a lot more in those more vulnerable neighborhoods where health and mortality are consequences of not having enough trees. There's a number of things that need to be done, and Vancouver's been good in many respects, as has Metro Vancouver, in terms of producing sort of good advice on how we can restore trees and use more adaptive tree species. So that's one issue, is we need trees that will survive drought and heat, as well as cold, etc. in the winter.
Let's check in now with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Joe, clearly it's hot, but I know you are looking at some changes coming.
That's right, Anita. Very similar temperatures tomorrow in the forecast, not just for Metro Vancouver, but the interior as well. So yes, seek the forest. About a 13-degree difference if you're in the shaded forest versus concrete, by the way. But yes, changes are coming really beginning tomorrow evening for the South Coast. Let me set you up with the BC Fire Danger Rating map for today. Lots of orange there across southern sections of the province. That's the high to pockets of extreme where fires can continue in explosive behaviors once we're dealing with this kind of hot and dry weather. And we're sort of into our fourth, going on fifth day of this latest round of hot weather. We just have heat warnings, though, for the Fraser Canyon, Lytton included, and inland central coastal sections. Elsewhere, it is still above seasonal and dry, but we're seeing a bit of relief through the overnight. So that's why we're not hitting those warning criteria this time around. Here's a look at the current temperatures, though. We are in the 30s for the Fraser Valley, in the high 30s for the southern Okanagan, Princeton at a 34, where we're watching the Karameas fire, and high 30s out towards parts of the Kootenay. So it is above seasonal, and we are looking to see those hot temperatures stick around for one more day. The blip we get, though, on Wednesday, Anita, coming with lightning strikes. So I want to break that down and what that means for the fire danger a little bit later on in the show.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A big victory for Canada's Evan Dunphy, who won the men's 10-kilometer race walk with a record-setting performance yesterday at the Commonwealth Games.
He will be Commonwealth champion. The 10,000-metre champion for Canada in the world is Evan Dunphy.
The 31-year-old from Richmond finished the race in a Games record time of 38 minutes, 36.37 seconds, while also breaking his own Canadian record and setting a new personal best. It was 3.35 seconds faster than his previous national record. That was set last year at the Harry Jerome Track Classic. Now, Dunphy fell behind at the halfway point, but he moved up from 5th place and took the lead in the closing stages. It's his first Commonwealth Games medal and in his third appearance. Way to go, Evan. This story had me a little motivated, doing a little bit of race walking around our newsroom today. It is not an easy movement if you haven't tried it before. Okay, switching gears here. Back in 2020, we launched a new series called Secret Spaces. Unfortunately, the COVID pandemic hit, and that meant the project could not continue. We did, though, capture some amazing tape, and today we want to share some of that with you. We're going to take you inside the Vancouver Archives. It's a bunker-like building in Vanier Park that has some amazing pieces of history. We spoke to some of the archivists whose job it is to catalog these treasures, both real and some imagined. Take a look.
Right now, you are in the vault, the main vault at the City of Vancouver Archives here in Vanier Park. It opened in 1972. It was the tail end of the Centennial projects in the late 1960s, and this building was built as the final stage of that to house the collection of our first city archivist, Major Matthews, and also to bring all the city records that had been stashed in various places at City Hall together in one building. This was actually the first purpose-built municipal archives in Canada. What's here in this particular vault is about 60% of the holdings of the archives. About 40% of it is in off-site storage because the vaults here are full. The reason we have the City of Vancouver records, you may think, hey, for historical reasons to show the development of Vancouver, absolutely, but also in terms of the city records, evidence of the city's decisions. The private sector records tell the other side of that city development story, so you can come here and find out what the city did, but you can also see what was going on from the non-city perspective.
One thing I find folks notice right away is a lot of the hats. They see the hats. This is a prisoner records book. We have 4 of them here at the City of Vancouver Archives, and this book is the one that we have that's the most recent. So it's actually spanning the years 1912 to 1917, and they go as far back as 1898. This book is largely covering petty crime in Vancouver. So it's things like theft, minor theft, drug possession, prostitution, and vagrancy. Gives you a lot of different information about the individual, their occupation, but then their criminal occupation as well. So this entry here is William White. He's originally from England, it's listing, and he's marked as having a former occupation, at least, of a marine fireman. There's also this section here for marks, etc. So it includes things like scars or certain birthmarks, let's say, but this one looks like it's written down as he has an eagle or a butterfly and peacock on his right shoulder. So he might have had a tattoo as well. In some ways, it's showing a photograph of part of the population that, you know, we don't necessarily have a lot of their photographs otherwise.
This is for the entryway of Stanley Park. This design was put together by Thomas Mawson, an English landscape architect, and the city needed to revamp this area, and it was quite controversial at the time. They didn't like the designs that had been proposed to them, so they approached Mr. Mawson and said, hey, can you come up with 3 designs that we could propose? None of the 3 came about for various reasons, but this was the favored design, and it very much shows a formal layout of a garden. It's very reminiscent of that, and turning the Lost Lagoon area into this massive pond and having a museum complex, a stadium. So really bringing the cultural aspect into parks, which was a little bit at odds with the way North Americans often view parks. This is 1945 proposal by the park commissioner, George Thompson, and this is the lead up into Stanley Park, so proposing this civic center where you have a library, where you have a theater, an auditorium, you have an art gallery, so again, this cultural hubbub all the way along to Stanley Park, and we're looking at it from Hotel Vancouver area. So this is downtown. So it's beautiful. It's tinted with watercolor. We like the visual of it. It's beautiful, and especially since what we have downtown looks nothing like this. So it's always interesting to dream and think of what Vancouver could have been.
After the break, from inhaling humid air to fanning a gassy breeze, how wildfire smoke affects the air we breathe, we speak to an expert on the impacts of heat on our health. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. While we are battling the heat here in Vancouver, cities in Saskatchewan have been dealing with thunderstorms. Ethan Williams explains why.
You've probably seen it before. A juicy thunderstorm is headed right toward the city or town where you live. Then just as it's about to hit, it dissipates or splits around you. Well, it turns out there might be a reason for this. One researcher I spoke with looked at thunderstorms in an urban area, and he noticed this same splitting pattern. So why does it happen? Cities are often hotter than surrounding rural areas. Buildings, pavement, and even air pollution in cities can trap heat. This can affect incoming thunderstorms.
And so as the storms are approaching, they see these 2 different air masses, one away from the city and one over the city. And they 2 sort of collide with each other, and they create a front, and they just go around it.
Some research has shown that cities can even create thunderstorms or intensify them.
If you add heat to the system, that should increase or destabilize the atmosphere, so could lead to greater storms forming, especially downstream of a city.
There's another phenomenon called virga that could also explain why cities sometimes get mist. Virga is when rain falls from a cloud but evaporates before hitting the ground. And the heat that cities give off can impact this.
If you have a fairly widespread warm rain event spanning the city and the surrounding countryside, you're more likely to see the rain evaporating over the city than over the surrounding countryside, because the city is warmer and its air drier.
Now, this doesn't happen with every single thunderstorm. Lots of times it's just the luck of the draw or location. But experts do say that by changing our traditional civic infrastructure, we could change our precipitation patterns. By adding things like trees on rooftops and lighter colored pavement when constructing roads, summer storms may be more enticed rather than repelled by our cities. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina. Mentioned earlier, crews are still focusing on 8 fires of note in the province, and that's prompted Environment Canada to issue a special air quality statement for the South Okanagan area. More smoke is expected around the Karameas Creek fire near Penticton after planned ignitions yesterday and today. Environment Canada says wildfire smoke is a constantly changing mixture of particles and gases that can change quickly over short distances and can vary considerably hour by hour. To talk more about how wildfire smoke affects us, we are joined live by Dr. Melissa Lem, who's with us every 2 weeks on the show. Dr. Lem is a Vancouver family doctor and an assistant clinical professor at UBC's Faculty of Medicine. Dr. Lem, as we look to temperatures rising in the coming days and you couple that with more wildfire smoke in some areas, what are you worried about?
Unfortunately, there are lots of negative short-term health effects of wildfire smoke, like increased risk of stroke, lung disease, heart disease, diabetes exacerbations, and something I saw a lot of in my own practice over the past 2 years, which is worse mental health. And one major culprit in these effects is that people aren't able to get outside safely to spend time exercising or in green space to keep themselves healthy. And then when you add heat into the mix, it's double trouble, because extreme heat catalyzes chemical reactions that worsen smog and air quality at ground level, and obviously increase your risk of heat illness. So unfortunately, we might find people in our offices and ERs with asthma attacks and heat stroke at the same time.
Wow, okay. And, you know, Health Canada uses AQHI, or the Air Quality Health Index, to figure out what the risks are. But there's also another report called AQI. Confusing for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people when they see this. Can you talk about the differences between the systems and how people should interpret them?
The difference between AQHI and AQI is just like the acronym says, the H, or the health impacts, aren't necessarily considered in the AQI. So the AQHI includes the effects of multiple different pollutants, whereas the AQI considers the effects of just the single worst pollutant at any time. And it's really important for everyone to know how to find out what these parameters are in our areas. Often you can find it in your local weather forecast, and also what to do about it. So if the AQHI is 10 or higher, this is really high risk for everyone. So you want to avoid any strenuous activities outside, even if you have no medical conditions. And then if you're in an at-risk population, for example, you have chronic heart disease or lung disease, an AQHI of 4 or higher is the threshold for avoiding activity outdoors. And as we see more and more wildfires driven by climate change, we should all know these numbers off by heart.
So what do you suggest for someone who's super healthy and, you know, they see a number like this and they want to get outside? Do you think that they, you know, are safe to do sort of their regular activity and just monitor themselves?
It's a bit of a trade-off, because a lot of us derive mental health and physical health benefits from exercising and spending time in green space and in blue spaces. But Health Canada does say that air quality health index of 10 or higher then you should avoid any kind of outdoor activity by anyone. So if it's just a couple days of air quality advisories, it's probably best to spend time indoors or go to a gym where there is air filtration and the air quality is higher.
And Dr. Lem, just really quickly here, are you seeing anybody coming into your office with concerns about heat-related effects or wildfire smoke, anything like that?
I think people are a lot more concerned about it now, especially after what we saw last year with the heat dome that killed over 600 people in BC, and also the wildfire smoke we've had year after year. So people with chronic lung conditions like asthma are asking for their puffer refills. People who are more vulnerable and on multiple different medications because they have chronic diseases are asking me about how to manage those medications during times of heat. So absolutely, there is more concern out there and people are getting better educated.
Dr. Melissa Lem, President-elect of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Thank you. And on the other side of the country, wildfires burning out of control have people in central Newfoundland on edge today. Flames grew larger over the weekend, and residents of nearby communities were told they may have to leave their homes at a moment's notice.
I packed up today, just be on the safe side.
I'm just packing up things that I think I need and be ready to go when the government says move out. You just got to be ready to go when the time comes.
A state of emergency is in place for parts of the province because of heavy smoke. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is telling people to be ready to leave quickly if necessary. Authorities say there is some positive news. Weather conditions are expected to improve, and that should allow firefighters to get at the flames. Farewell, Sandy D. A 70s pop icon has died. We look back at the life and legacy of Olivia Newton-John.
Ten people from British Columbia went to court in Seattle today. The 10 are opponents of nuclear energy, and they were in court to face charges of trespassing at a nuclear submarine base in Washington in June. Sue Stern reports.
On the weekend of June 9th, members of the Pacific Life community jumped over the fence at the Trident nuclear submarine base in Bangor, Washington, just south of the BC border. It is an orderly process that has been repeated many times since 1975 in an effort aimed at making people aware of the most advanced and deadly nuclear weapons in the United States. The demonstrators look forward to the court cases that follow. Today, 10 Canadian protesters from Pacific Life entered the Seattle courthouse on the 34th anniversary of the Hiroshima atomic bombing, with a witness that would clearly represent their fears about nuclear weapons. Clutching pictures of her dead husband and daughter, Mrs. Toshiko Yoshikawa of Toronto described the painful and horrifying cancer deaths of her family caused by radiation from the Hiroshima bombing. The 10 Canadians conducted their own defenses, each one serious and intense in admitting the trespass charge, but fighting it on the grounds that the Trident nuclear base violates international law. Federal Judge Robert Takasugi, who said he honored the Hiroshima anniversary but refused to accept a request for a 2-minute silence in the court, found the Canadians guilty of one count of simple trespassing. He gave them suspended sentences and ordered them to do volunteer work in lieu of fines. After 4 years and 24 demonstrations, the protesters feel they are making gradual progress in the courts. They feel the judges are willing to hear a bit more about their cause with each new court case. And so the protesters say they will continue with the method of civil disobedience, hoping that one day the politicians will see things their way and put an end to nuclear weapons throughout the world. Sue Stern, CBC News at Federal Court in Seattle.
Investigations into Donald Trump took a dramatic turn this afternoon after the former U.S. president says the FBI conducted a search of his Mar-a-Lago residence in Palm Beach, Florida. In a statement, Trump says his resort home is under siege and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. The raid was unannounced, according to Trump, adding agents also broke into his safe. There are reports the search focused on the removal of records to his private estate. The former president was not at home when the search warrant was executed. We'll have more on this breaking story at 11 o'clock tonight with Dan. And to some sad news now, Olivia Newton-John, who soared to international stardom in Greece as both a singer and a movie star, has died. Lindsay Duncombe shows us a career of great distinction and all the other stars who are bidding her farewell tonight.
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night.
Country love songs propelled Olivia Newton-John to stardom. She had a warmth in her voice, in her smile.
Love you. I honestly love you.
Newton-John began performing as a teenager in Australia. She competed for England, where she was born, in the Eurovision Song Contest, racking up hits and awards through the 70s.
Hopelessly devoted to you.
Then this. In the movie musical Grease, Newton-John played Sandy, wholesome new girl, hopelessly devoted to bad boy, good dancer Danny Zuko. Fans loved it. They still do.
So we feel very grateful that this is still a part of everyone's. They love it.
Newton-John made a lifelong friend in her Grease co-star, John Travolta. He wrote today, "You made all our lives so much better. Your impact was incredible." Signing, your Danny. After Grease, Newton-John's style moved from warmth to heat. Some radio stations wouldn't play this song. Too sexy. An evolution Newton-John embraced.
You've got to feel comfortable with what you're doing. And so I guess it just was a development.
Olivia Newton-John was first diagnosed with breast cancer in the 90s. The disease would return. A tumor in her spine meant she had to learn how to walk again. She shared her suffering, her time, and money to fund treatments and a cure. She wasn't a complainer.
I don't think I'd change anything because I've had such an amazingly interesting life and done so many things.
Things so many of us had the joy of watching. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Big loss for sure. Okay, switching gears, Hockey Canada is now explaining an apparent discrepancy in the number of incidents of alleged abuse, harassment, and discrimination it's dealt with. The organization's president provided the House of Commons committee with one number the day after a government agency provided another. CBC's Janice McGregor has the latest.
Since 2018, national sport organizations have been required as a condition for their federal funding to report any incidents of abuse, discrimination, or harassment that could compromise their projects or their programming. And so, when an official from Sport Canada appeared before the Commons Heritage Committee on July 26, he was asked how many incidents like this had been reported by Hockey Canada since this new requirement was put in place 4 years ago. His answer? 8. When Hockey Canada's president, Scott Smith, testified the next day on July 27th, he was grilled about allegations first reported by TSN that players from 2 different national junior teams, the 2003 squad and the 2018 version, had participated in separate group sexual assaults, now under investigation by police in Halifax and London, Ontario. When he was asked about these investigations, Smith said this.
The 2003 incident, there has now been 4 reports to Sport Canada. 2018, 2003, and then there were 2 additional reports that are not sexual assault or sexual misconduct.
Hear that? He said 4 reports, not 8. CBC News contacted Hockey Canada to explain this discrepancy. Its spokesperson, Jeremy Knight, said that Smith had been asked about ongoing investigations, and there are apparently 4 cases where the investigations remain open. But if Sport Canada's database includes 8 reports from Hockey Canada in total, that means, based on Smith's testimony, that there were 4 cases reported in 2019 and 2020 where the investigations have concluded or been closed without finding anything. Because all these reports are confidential, we don't know in any of these cases what happened, who was involved, or whether anyone was held accountable. Sport Canada provided CBC News with a year-by-year breakdown of all the incidents reported by Hockey Canada, and when it did so, it also revealed an additional 9th case that the department says was reported on July 28th. That was the day after Hockey Canada officials testified before the committee. A spokesperson for Sport Minister Pascal Saint-Onge said this 9th incident isn't a formal case, but someone had contacted Hockey Canada to request information about the process for reporting the possible mistreatment of an athlete from the Northwest Territories. Hockey Canada advised this person to contact the police and also gave this person information about the new third-party mechanism that the government has put in place for investigating an allegation like this. But we don't know anything more about what, if anything, happened next. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
A victory for U.S. Democrats as they passed a historic bill that invests $400 million to tackle climate change. That's coming up. And at 6:40, a live shot tonight from Long Beach Lodge in Tofino. Another warm summer day across the South Coast, but we are bracing for more potential wildfire starts. Johanna will explain in your BC-wide forecast after this.
A small town in Saskatchewan is fuming after it has gone nearly 9 months without laboratory services. The town of Belcaris says it can't get any answers on when services will resume. It has even taken the rare move of filing a Freedom of Information request just to get information, but it's still waiting.
Frustrating is one word for it, I guess.
Now, Town Mayor Kirby Korchinski is going public with her concerns.
Well, really, we keep kind of getting spun around from one to the other, from SHA to the minister's office.
The trouble began last year when a vehicle slammed into the side of the town's only medical center and damaged testing equipment. Insurance claims were submitted, but then everything was put on hold while the Saskatchewan Health Authority seized that opportunity to review the status of the lab services. The Integrated Care Center serves the surrounding area. Now people must drive to Fort Capel or even an hour away to Regina to get simple x-rays and blood tests. And with no work, some of the laboratory staff have retired, meaning vacancies need to be filled.
Like any place in small town Saskatchewan, healthcare is kind of part of the lifeblood of the town.
The SHA's review is ongoing. The town says the government promised to reopen lab services by the start of August, but it hasn't. In a statement, the Minister of Rural and Remote Health says, "I understand the frustration of the community and that communication should have been better." Everett Hinley says he is committed to restoring lab services in the town, but says that will take some time and will need to be done in a phased approach as the replacement of equipment, potential retrofitting, and recruitment of the vacant position permit. This week, the town of Belcaris was approached about another meeting with provincial officials.
Meetings aren't going to solve this problem. Somebody actually needs to do something. He needs to hire the staff that have been lost to retirement, and they need to get out there and buy that equipment, get it set up in the lab, whatever process they need to go through to get that certified. It's pretty straightforward.
For the town of Belcaris, the process has already taken long enough. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
As the economic crisis grows more dire in Sri Lanka, more people in the South Asian country are struggling to make ends meet. Salima Shivji has more on the growing number of people there relying on soup kitchens.
As Sri Lanka grapples with the worst economic crisis it's ever seen, with inflation now at 60% and food prices skyrocketing, soup kitchens like this one have become a vital lifeline for those who are most desperate, who have really had to skip some meals, ration and scrounge simply because they can no longer afford the basics. There is a team of volunteers here every weekday at lunchtime prepping the curries and serving large plates. The charity group that runs this soup kitchen has a dozen others too, all over the country, and more to come, all of which have been set up in the last 2 months, running purely on donations as the crisis has deepened in Sri Lanka.
Sometimes we get people who are only surviving with this particular meal. Right now, I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel as at now, because the need has been increasing, the number of people who come to eat has been increased.
The people here just so grateful that they're able to eat for free this lunchtime meal. Some really talk about the sadness that they have to go through this and worry for their children. She says the people in her position are hit hardest by this crisis. She's not sure who to blame, but many others in the country point the finger directly at the former government, the former president who was ousted from power, pushed out by protesters a few weeks ago. But many others are skeptical that the new president, voted in by parliament, will be able to turn things around anytime soon. Unsure, even though he is promising long-term solutions and big reforms, he's also warning that the worst is yet to come in a country already on the brink. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Gampaha, Sri Lanka.
And U.S. President Joe Biden is on the road now that he has recovered from COVID-19. Today, he visited parts of Kentucky, which experienced historic flooding at the end of last month. The CBC's Julia Wong tells us it gave him a chance to talk about a bill passed by the Senate yesterday.
President Biden landed in eastern Kentucky this morning to visit communities hardest hit by floodwaters. The president and first lady surveyed the damage and met with families affected by the devastation.
The weather may be out of our control for now, but it's not beyond our control. And I promise you, we're staying, the federal government along with the state and county and the city, we're staying until everybody's back to where they were. Not a joke.
Massive amounts of rain fell on parts of the state near the end of July. Water levels in rivers rose quickly, sweeping away houses and vehicles. At least 37 people have died, and there have been hundreds of rescue missions. Some people are still unaccounted for. It could take years to rebuild these communities. The president has approved a major disaster declaration for Kentucky, freeing up federal funding for the state. In the backdrop of today's visit is the U.S. Senate passing a sweeping bill yesterday.
Because of a number of things we got done on a bipartisan basis, like a $200 million infrastructure project, like what we're doing today, we passed yesterday, helping take care of everything from health care to God knows what else.
The bill includes close to $400 billion to tackle climate change. It's now headed to the Democrat-controlled House, where it is expected to pass later this week. Julia Wong, CBC News, Washington.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is back live with us. And Joe, I think everyone wants to know when that rain is coming. We need you to break it down.
Yes, I think we're all ready for just a little return of the showers. It's nice when we've got, 3 or 4 warm days and a nice little rain to break it up. And that's what we've got coming. Now, it's not a lot of rain in the forecast, and it is going to be hot for one more day. Let me show you what it feels like out there right now with the humidex. And there is a bit of a humidex. It's muggy out there. Again, even though we're not under the heat warnings for the South Coast, it does feel like that elevated heat, 35 out towards Pitt Meadows, 36 right now is the humidex in through Abbotsford and parts of Metro Vancouver feeling like the 30s. Want to show you the big picture. We have heat warnings in effect for southern Alberta, for southern Ontario and southern Quebec. And of course, as we mentioned, watching the wildfire situation in Newfoundland, where it is also being hot and dry. So really seeing these heat waves move in and out of Canada over the past few weeks as we get into the second half of summer. Okay, taking you through the next couple of hot days, and notice those forecast temperatures for the interior. really bumping up after the breakdown on Wednesday. So a little bit cooler Wednesday and Thursday, and then we see that heat rebound for Friday and into the weekend. Okay, timing those showers out. Tomorrow we'll see increasing clouds. Here's Tuesday through the afternoon. I think we're just talking high clouds through Tuesday. Tomorrow evening, we may see our first few rounds of showers across Metro Vancouver. Really light if we get them tomorrow evening. It's Wednesday that we've got the best chance of widespread showers. Some models are really just hinting at trace amounts, while others are bringing up to maybe 5 to 10 millimeters. So it is much needed rain across the south coast, especially with fire danger across the island creeping up. But look towards the interior. Those sort of circles that you're seeing show up rather than the widespread rain. That's the concern for lightning strikes. Again, really watching that Wednesday afternoon, widespread lightning strikes in hot and dry conditions that may mean new fire starts. 24 for YBR tomorrow, which will translate to a 31 inland. And we'll see that nice progression as a front rolls in when it comes to the clouds. So some high cirrus, then we'll start to see those cirro cumulus where they look a little puffy. And then by the end of the day, overcast skies before showers. Now, again, it's not a washout of a Wednesday, but look for that lovely smell of rain in the air when we do see that on Wednesday. Rebounding for Thursday and Friday. Some models bringing a few showers in for Saturday. It'd be nice if we could get that. And then back to sunny and dry for early next week, Anita. So I'll take us through one shower at a time.
All right, Jo, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, how did Ninja Turtle Michelangelo work his nunchuck skills with the Filipino martial art of arnis? We tell you about the lean, mean, and green fighting style next.
Afternoon, Granby Medical Clinic. How can I help you?
It's not 911, but on weekends, it'll have to do.
Make sure you have your emergency before 4 o'clock, otherwise you got to go to Dauphin.
This medical clinic normally deals with checkups and flu shots Monday through Friday, but this summer, on weekends, it's a makeshift emergency room. Due to staff shortages, Prairie Mountain Health shut down 1/3 of its ERs on summer weekends. These ones are closed this Saturday, Sunday. To fill the gaps, this health clinic is open until 8 p.m. on weekends. One doctor and one community member who answers phones and puts patients in rooms. People like Sharon Storzuk, her only medical training, working in a lab as a student.
Just because you never know what's going to happen. If we got a lot of seniors here, so we don't know if there's going to be stroke or heart attack, whatever. Even kids choking, whatever. Like, where do you go? By the time you get them to Dauphin, it could be too late.
45 locals are taking turns on this volunteer shift. So far, doctors say most patients only have the flu or need stitches, but there have been close calls.
I've had somebody who had a maybe stroke, but we were able to manage it through clinic. If they're really sick and they need admission, we'd have to just call the next ER. It's not ideal, but it's something.
Rural Manitoba communities have taken matters into their own hands for years. Swan River has actively recruited doctors on its own, and they say it's helped fill gaps left by the province. In an email, a Prairie Mountain spokesperson says it isn't safe to keep emergency departments open during the shortage, and they're keeping enough ERs open to service the entire area, along with the paramedics who normally cover the entire region. This is about life and death for community members, of course, but it's also about small town living itself. The people here we spoke with worry that if ER hours keep getting cut, no one will want to move here, and the town itself could die.
We need our ER to stay open, whether they're busy or not busy. But it is part of our community. It's what we need. Because basically, small communities are falling, like disappearing, I'm going to say eventually. You're going to be just a suburb of Dauphin kind of, you know.
Prairie Mountain Health says they're trying to bring back normal hours, but that won't happen until the fall. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Grandview, Manitoba.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Well, they say every dog has its day, and that is especially true in Northern California. Dozens of canines gathered on a beach near San Francisco on the weekend to compete in the World Dog Surfing Championships. The popular pooches competed in different classes based on size, and they were rated on everything from technique to the size of the waves they rode. The event has been held in San Francisco in that area since 2006. Dog surfing events have been held around the world in recent years. There are many in California, Florida, Australia, and the UK. The concept might be barking mad, but there's no denying the pups and their owners love it. Yeah, those dogs are definitely catching more waves than I ever have. Okay, a former stunt actor is trying to bring Filipino martial arts to the masses. Arnis is already an internationally recognized sport with tournaments and competitions held across Asia and the United States, but it has yet to gain some traction here in Canada. Now, its distinct knife and blade moves have been used in Hollywood films for decades. And as Gianpaolo Mendoza shows us, this actor is hoping more people will recognize the Filipino roots of this high-intensity discipline.
Almost all culture, from Japanese, Korean, Thai, they all have their own martial art. Filipinos in North America, we're like maybe the third largest ethnic community, and we have our own culture. We have our own martial art. Arnis Kali Eskrima is the largest function of Filipino martial arts in the nation. Filipino martial art has a lot of a different variety of techniques. So a lot of it is like outside fighting. You know, you kind of move and strike. Move and strike. Kali practitioners, they are more into like blade and knife. Eskrima people, Arnis people is using more pad stick. I actually started in the 80s. At that time, the Hollywood North is coming to Vancouver. I got involved with the action team. We're like a stunt team. I go to audition for any part in Los Angeles. I never get any hiring, never get any chance. I gave up. I came back to Vancouver, and all of a sudden, somebody called me. Oh, Chishir, there is audition for Ninja Turtle, and I actually won the audition through stick fighting. I am Michelangelo of Ninja Turtle Part 3. They thought that, hey, that's cool because they thought that nunchuck is only with rope in between. But through Arnis Kali Eskrima, you can do almost like nunchuck without the string, and it is safer. Arnis Kali Eskrima is like everybody's kind of doing it, but not getting the proper recognition comes from the Philippines. We decided that let's campaign for it to become recognized sports in Canada and USA. In Philippines, we are already included in the ASEAN Games under Philippine Olympic and Philippine Sports. In Canada, we started campaigning 3 years ago, but now we are still not approved. I'm 67 years old now. I've been doing martial arts since I was 8 years old. For me, it's a one-stop shop. It's a whole package of mind, body, heart training. It can be for health. It can be for self-discipline. At the same time, it's for self-defense. I would like the whole world to know that this gift from the Philippines, a treasure of the Philippines, is here to stay.
How very cowabunga. Yeah, that was a total surprise. Did not expect him to be Michelangelo in the third movie. A little starstruck over here, I gotta say. I was pretty excited at that surprise. Well, that is it for CBC Vancouver News at 6 tonight. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you back here tomorrow.